The invasion. They came without warning. The skies over every major city on Earth darkened as massive ships materialized in low orbit. When the communications blackout hit, Dr. Ilara Chen was working late in her neurological research lab at MIT. The building shook as something massive passed overhead, and then everything electronic simply stopped. She rushed to the window just in time to see the first landing craft descend. Sleek and silver, shaped like massive teardrops, they touched down with impossible precision in the center of Cambridge Common. Her research assistant, David, appeared at her side, face pale. "What's happening?" he whispered. "First contact," Ilara replied, her heart hammering in her chest. And they didn't bother to call ahead. Within hours, the pattern became clear across the globe. The visitors, who called themselves the Vraxian Collective, established control zones in every major city. Their technology was overwhelming, able to neutralize Earth's military response with minimal effort. Weapons systems failed, communications networks collapsed, and power grids went dark as the aliens demonstrated their superiority. 3 days after the invasion, the Vraxians addressed humanity through hijacked broadcast systems. Their spokesperson, a tall, almost skeletal figure with iridescent skin and 4 arms, spoke flawless English. "People of Earth, we are the Vraxian Collective. Your world is now under our protection. Resistance is unnecessary and unproductive. Your species has potential as a resource, but lacks the evolutionary advantages necessary for galactic citizenship. Cooperation will ensure your comfort during the transition period." The transition period quickly revealed itself as the beginning of a harvesting operation. Processing centers appeared in major cities, where humans were taken for assessment. Those who entered rarely returned, and those who did seemed change, walking with vacant expressions, compliant and hollow. 2 weeks after the invasion, Ilara received a visitor at her apartment, where she'd been confined like most non-essential personnel. A sharp knock at her door revealed Jackson Hayes, a former Marine Corps colonel she recognized from news reports about military operations in the Middle East. "Dr. Chen," he said, voice low. "May I come in? We need to talk." Hayes wasn't alone. With him was a nervous-looking man in his 30s, clutching a tablet. "This is Omar Patel," Hayes explained once they were inside. He was working as a technician in one of the Vraxian processing centers until yesterday. "He smuggled out some data I think you need to see." Omar placed the tablet on Ilara's coffee table and activated it. The screen displayed medical scans and chemical analyses that made Ilara's blood run cold. "They're extracting a compound from human brains," Omar explained, his voice shaking. "Something they call neuronic essence. They're particularly interested in the hippocampus and amygdala regions." Ilara studied the data, her scientific mind racing. "These are areas associated with memory formation and emotional processing," she said. "But why would they want this specific enzyme?" Hayes leaned forward. "We believe the Vraxians consume it. Their biology is deteriorating. They're a dying species. Something in human brain chemistry helps stabilize their neural pathways." "How did you get this information?" Ilara asked. "We've formed a resistance network," Hayes replied. "Small cells operating independently, sharing information when possible. The Vraxians think we're compliant because we're physically weaker than they are. They don't understand what humans do when our backs are against the wall." 3 days later, Ilara found herself in an abandoned subway maintenance tunnel beneath Boston, converted into a makeshift laboratory. Hayes had smuggled in some of her equipment from MIT, and Omar had provided additional Vraxian tech, stolen from the processing center. "Before the invasion, I was studying anomalous human brain patterns," Ilara explained to the small group of resistance members. "Specifically, the way certain individuals can generate unusual electromagnetic signatures during heightened emotional states." She activated a holographic display showing brain scan comparisons. "Human brains produce unique wave patterns that don't appear in any other species we studied. It's particularly pronounced during states of intense emotion, fear, love, determination. And what does this have to do with fighting the Vraxians? Asked Sarah Martinez, a former Army Ranger who now led security for the resistance cell. Everything, Ilara replied. I've analyzed the Vraxian technology Omar provided. Their systems are vulnerable to certain electromagnetic frequencies, the same frequencies human brains generate naturally when stimulated correctly. The resistance members exchanged skeptical glances. You're saying our brains can disrupt their tech? Hayes asked. Not exactly, Ilara clarified. Not in their natural state. But if we could amplify those signals. She pulled out a small device that looked like an ordinary earbud. This prototype enhances the natural neural outputs of a human brain. With this, one person could potentially disrupt Vraxian systems within a small radius. That's not much of a weapon, Martine said. It's a start, Hayes replied. We don't need to defeat their entire armada at once. We just need to begin somewhere. The first test came a week later. A small team infiltrated a Vraxian outpost on the outskirts of Boston. The facility served as a collection point where humans were held before transport to the main processing center. Intelligence suggested 20 captives were inside, guarded by 5 Vraxian soldiers. Hayes led the operation himself, with Martinez, Omar, and 3 other resistance fighters. Each wore one of Ilara's neural amplifiers, activated by a simple mental command. Remember, Hayes told them as they approached, we don't know how effective these will be. Be prepared to abort if necessary. They needn't have worried. When the team activated their amplifiers within range of the outpost, the effect was immediate. Vraxian energy barriers flickered and died. Door mechanisms jammed. The aliens' communication devices emitted piercing feedback that sent them reeling in pain. The resistance team moved quickly, securing the facility and freeing the captives. But as they prepared to withdraw, the building's power suddenly restored. They're adapting, Martines warned. We need to move. They escaped with 18 of the 20 captives. 2 Vraxians have been killed in the process, the first alien casualties since the invasion began. Word of the successful raid spread through the resistance network. More importantly, they now had proof that Ilara's technology worked. In her underground lab, she worked tirelessly to improve the neural amplifiers, extending their range and power. The Vraxians don't understand what they're dealing with, she told Hayes as they reviewed the data from the raid. They see us as primitive, emotionally driven creatures. They don't realize those emotions are precisely what makes us dangerous. Across the city, the Vraxian Command Center received reports of the attack with growing concern. The Supreme Commander, a Vraxian elder named Azrith, studied the security footage with narrowed eyes. How did they disable our systems? He demanded. His second-in-command hesitated. Unknown, Supreme Commander. Our diagnostics detected unusual energy signatures moments before the failures occurred. Increase security at all facilities, Azrith ordered, and accelerate the harvesting schedule. If the humans are developing countermeasures, we must complete our extraction before they can organize more effectively. What the Vraxians couldn't understand was that their very presence was accelerating human innovation. Dr. Chen's breakthrough was just the beginning. As resistance cells formed across the globe, humans demonstrated the trait that had defined their species throughout history: adaptability under pressure. 6 weeks after the invasion, the resistance had grown from isolated pockets to a connected global network. Ilara's neural amplifiers had been distributed worldwide, and successful raids had freed thousands of captives. But the Vraxians responded with brutal efficiency. Harvesting quotas increased. More humans disappeared into processing centers daily. It was becoming a race against time. Could humanity develop an effective counterattack before the aliens extracted what they needed and moved on, leaving Earth a hollowed-out husk? The answer came from an unexpected source. Among the recently rescued captives was Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a quantum physicist who had been experimenting with human consciousness before the invasion. After reviewing Ilara's research, He suggested a radical enhancement. Your amplifiers focus on individual brain patterns, he explained. But human consciousness has always shown signs of entanglement at a quantum level. What if we could create a network effect? Synchronize multiple human minds to generate a more powerful disruption. A neural network, Ilara breathed. Not digital. Biological. Exactly, Tanaka nodded. The Vraxians harvest us individually. They don't understand our potential for collective action. As the Resistance prepared for their most ambitious operation yet, the Vraxian Supreme Commander made a discovery of his own. Analysis of the unusual energy signatures during the Resistance attacks had revealed a pattern. The disruptions correspond to human emotional states, the Vraxian chief scientist reported. They're using their own neural energy as a weapon. Azrith's expression darkened. Impossible. Their brains are primitive, useful only for harvesting. Evidence suggests otherwise, Supreme Commander. The humans possess neural capabilities we didn't anticipate. Then we must accelerate the final phase. Azrith decided. Prepare the harvesters for mass extraction. Across Earth's major cities, enormous structures began to rise, towering, needle-like spires that hummed with ominous energy. The harvesters were designed to extract neuronic essence from millions of humans simultaneously, providing enough of the precious enzyme to sustain the entire Vraxian collective for generations. The countdown to humanity's last stand had begun. The CUNT. The massive harvester spires rising above Earth's cities cast long shadows both literally and figuratively. Each one represented a death sentence for millions of humans within its radius. The Resistance understood they had perhaps 3 days before the massive machines became operational. In the underground lab beneath Boston, Dr. Ilara Chen and Dr. Tanaka worked frantically to finalize their neural network technology. Using components salvaged from Vraxian equipment and human electronics, they had created a central amplifier, a device that could synchronize and magnify the neural outputs of connected humans. The principle is simple, Ilara explained to Hayes and the Resistance leadership. Each human brain is like a single musician, powerful in its own right, but limited. This device turns those individual musicians into an orchestra, playing in perfect harmony. And this music will disrupt the harvesters, Hayes asked. It should do more than disrupt them, Tanaka replied. If our calculations are correct, the synchronized neural output should create a cascading failure across all connected Vraxian systems. Sarah Martinez frowned. The Vraxians aren't stupid. They've already started adapting to our individual amplifiers. That's why we need to strike simultaneously, worldwide, Hayes said, before they can develop countermeasures. The plan was audacious. Resistance cells in 12 major cities would target the harvesters at precisely the same time. Each cell would deploy a neural network amplifier, connected to as many human participants as possible. The combined effect, they hoped, would not just disable the harvesters, but potentially cripple the entire Vraxian command structure. As preparations continued, a Vraxian patrol captured a Resistance courier carrying details about the planned attack. Within hours, Supreme Commander Azrith had ordered security increased around all harvester sites and accelerated the timeline for activation. The humans are planning something significant, he told his officers. We cannot allow them to interfere with the harvest. The Resistance grows stronger daily, his second-in-command observed. Perhaps we underestimated them. Azrith's expression hardened. They are resources, not rivals. Activate the harvesters immediately. We will begin with a limited extraction to demonstrate our resolve. In Boston, the Resistance headquarters received the alarming news. The harvester spire had begun to power up, days ahead of schedule. They know something's coming, Hayes said grimly. We need to move now, ready or not. Ilara looked up from her work, face pale but determined. The amplifier is ready, but we haven't tested it at full capacity. If the synchronization fails, we don't have a choice, Hayes replied. If those harvesters go online, it's over. Within an hour, the Boston resistance cell had mobilized. 300 people, former teachers, doctors, construction workers, students, gathered in the abandoned subway station. Each wore one of the individual neural amplifiers, but now they would be connected to something greater. The central amplifier sat on a makeshift platform in the center of the crowd. It looked deceptively simple, a metallic sphere about the size of a basketball, etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with soft blue light. "I need to be clear about what we're asking," Ilara addressed the crowd. "This isn't like the individual amplifiers. When we activate the network, your minds will be temporarily connected. You'll feel what others feel, share their thoughts, their fears, their determination. It won't be comfortable." A woman stepped forward from the crowd. "Will it hurt?" "Yes," Ilara admitted, "but not physically. It's the mental strain of connecting with hundreds of other consciousnesses." Hayes joined her on the platform. "Nobody is being forced to participate. If you want to walk away, now's the time." Not a single person left. "Then let's begin." As the resistance prepared for their desperate gambit, the Vraxian Command Center monitored increasing energy fluctuations throughout the city. "Something is building," the Vraxian scientists reported. "The human neural signatures are changing, becoming more coherent." Supreme Commander Azrith studied the readings with growing concern. "Accelerate the harvester activation sequence. Begin extraction immediately." Across Boston, the massive harvester spire began to hum with increasing intensity. At its base, captive humans were being loaded into processing chambers by the hundreds. In the subway station, Ilara activated the central amplifier. As it powered up, the 300 connected humans gasped in unison. The sensation was overwhelming. Hundreds of minds suddenly linked, emotions flowing between them like electricity. "Focus," Ilara called out, her own voice strained as she experienced the connection. "Channel your thoughts toward the amplifier." The device began to pulse faster, the blue light growing brighter. The connected humans swayed as one, their synchronized brain patterns creating a powerful electromagnetic field that expanded outward from the subway station. Above ground, the effects were immediate. Vraxian vehicles stalled in the streets. Communication systems failed. Energy barriers around their facilities flickered and died. At the base of the harvester, the processing chambers shut down mid-operation. Vraxian soldiers found their weapon systems offline, their environmental suits malfunctioning. For the first time since their arrival, the invaders experienced genuine fear. In the command center, alarms blared as systems failed across the board. "What is happening?" Azrith demanded, watching as display screens went dark around him. "The humans," his scientist gasped, struggling with his own equipment. "They've found a way to synchronize their neural outputs. The resulting field is disrupting all our systems. Impossible. They're primitives." "No, Commander," the scientist replied, looking at his leader with new understanding. "We were wrong about them. Their emotional capacity, the very thing we harvested from them. It gives them an ability we don't possess." Similar scenes played out across the globe as resistance cells activated their own neural networks. From New York to Tokyo, London to Sydney, synchronized human minds created devastating disruption fields that crippled Vraxian technology. In Boston, Hayes ordered the resistance fighters to move against the harvester while the Vraxians were vulnerable. Armed with conventional weapons and protected by the neural disruption field, they stormed the massive structure. The Vraxian defenders, stripped of their technological advantages, proved physically weaker than humans in direct combat. Evolved for intelligence rather than strength, they had relied on their advanced weapons and armor, all now rendered useless. Supreme Commander Azrith watched in disbelief as humans overran his forces. "How is this possible?" he demanded of no one in particular. "We control the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "Technology isn't everything," came a voice from behind him. Azrith turned to find Hayes and Ilara entering the command center, accompanied by armed resistance fighters. "Humanity has survived and thrived because we adapt, we feel deeply, and we never surrender. You would destroy us all." Azrith asked. Our entire species depends on the essence we harvest. We don't want to destroy anyone, Ilara replied. But we won't be harvested like cattle either. Your mistake was seeing our emotions as a resource to be consumed, rather than understanding their true power. 72 hours after the coordinated strike began, Vraxian forces worldwide had surrendered. Their technology rendered mostly inoperable by the sustained neural disruption fields, they had no choice but to negotiate. The terms were straightforward. The Vraxians would immediately cease all harvesting operations and release all captives. In exchange, Dr. Chen offered an alternative solution to their neural deterioration, a synthetic compound that mimicked the effects of the human enzyme without requiring extraction. It won't be as effective as the natural version, she explained to the Vraxian Leadership Council. But it will stabilize your neural pathways long enough for your scientists to develop a permanent solution. Why would you help us after what we've done? Asked the Vraxian, who had replaced Azrith as commander. Because that's also part of being human, Ilara replied. We can hate and fight with incredible ferocity, but we can also forgive and cooperate when given the chance. 6 months after the attempted harvest, the last Vraxian ships departed Earth's orbit. They left behind considerable technology as reparations, advancements that would accelerate human development by centuries. More importantly, they left with a newfound respect for the species they had so gravely underestimated. In their official report to the Galactic Commonwealth, the Vraxian collective included a warning about Earth and its inhabitants. Humans appear physically unimposing and technologically primitive by galactic standards. This appearance is dangerously deceptive. Their neural structures and emotional capacity give them abilities that conventional scans cannot detect. When threatened, their response exceeds all predictive models. Recommendation: Earth should be approached with diplomatic respect rather than colonization intent. Humans are not a resource to be harvested. They are potentially valuable allies or formidable adversaries. The choice will depend entirely on how they are treated. As the Vraxian report circulated through distant worlds, humanity began the process of rebuilding and preparing for their new role in a much larger universe. The neural network technology that had saved them from extinction evolved into the cornerstone of a new era of human innovation. Dr. Ilara Chen, standing in her newly established Global Neural Research Center, looked up at the night sky with a small smile. They thought we were powerless, she murmured to herself. Now they know better. Somewhere in the vast darkness above, other species were undoubtedly watching, calculating whether Earth represented an opportunity or a threat. Whatever came next, humanity was ready. They had discovered their hidden strength, not just as individuals, but as a connected, empathetic, unstoppable collective. The galaxy would never be the same.